I'm always intrigued by things that at a first glance seem a little out of place. Stories of people involved in wars where they otherwise shouldn't be. I'm always talking about von Steuben at Valley Forge, Fremantle at Gettysburg, Loring Pasha in Egypt, or Sir Percy Wyndham, wherever we may find him, whether it be Italy, Virginia, or Rangoon. There's something exciting about that fish out of water situation where someone completely unexpected brings their perspective or skills or eccentricity into the mix. Stories like that have always resonated with me, and I suppose that's why an American in Britain is about to start talking to you about the Ottoman Empire again. Now, here are some iconic photos from the First World War. Here's General Ludendorff. Here's these young German soldiers and this sailor. It's great to be able to look closer and read the uniform. The devil's in the detail, and each uniform tells a story. You can recognize the German Iron Cross or campaign ribbons, but over here, there's a curious red star with some calligraphy at its center. So how do German soldiers end up wearing an Ottoman award? This is the story of the Harp Madalyası. To the Ottomans, the War Medal. To the Germans, der Eiserne Halbmond, or as it came to be known in the West, the Gallipoli Star. This video is part of the Great Collab, Beyond the Western Front, a grand alliance between myself and 6 other channels, all talking about the impact of the First World War outside of Western Europe. See that you check those out or save the playlist below for later. You won't want to miss out on this series of obscure topics with resounding impacts in world history, and that is what the Ministry for History is all about. In 1914, with war being declared in Europe, the Ottoman entry into the First World War was not a sure-run thing. For many, it was still uncertain what side the Ottomans would come in on. Whose side would they choose to support? Favoring the Entente, Britain and France were heavily invested in the Ottoman Empire, and there were many precedents for both countries stepping in to protect the Ottomans, though not as effectively in the last decade or so. Britain and France were also supplying arms, and Britain was building the 2 huge new dreadnought battleships, which were funded by personal donations from all over the empire. A significant portion of the Ottoman government, led by Talat Pasha, were in favor of siding with the Entente because overall, given the scope and scale of the British Empire, France, and their alliance with Russia, only the Entente could make or break the territorial integrity of the Ottoman Empire. The case for the alliance with Germany was not simple. Germany was allied with all of their age-old enemies. Austria-Hungary, who in 1908 annexed Bosnia, and Italy, which wrested Tripolitania from the Ottomans in 1911. The closest ally of your worst enemies does not make a natural ally. However, in favor of Germany was the thriving financial and economic relationship with the Berlin-Baghdad Railway, a guarantee of support against the Ottomans' most dangerous enemy, Russia, who always had a covetous eye on all of their territory. In allying with the Germans, they would also have the ability to throw off the crippling yoke of Western debt, and the Germans would help them fight the Russians directly. Probably most importantly, Germany had been forming a strong military relationship with the Ottoman Empire for the last century. In their attempts to reform and modernize their army, the Ottomans had turned to European support time and again. Their first instance with the Prussians was with Moltke the Elder in the 1830s, fighting the Egyptians for Sultan Mahmud II. Then Abdulhamid II attempted to modernize the army with Prussian and later German officers. Then German General von der Goltz began training Ottoman officers in the 1880s at their academy in Constantinople. And then the relationship developed even further in 1913 when von Sanders came over in an official military mission. And von Sanders would eventually become an Ottoman field marshal and one of their most important commanders. The Germans took a hands-on role in their military support, sending their most talented soldiers as military advisors to the Ottomans, because they shared common enemies, despite their many differences. When war broke out, there were already German soldiers, German arms, German uniforms, and most importantly, German military culture and doctrines embedded in the Ottoman Empire. Being pragmatic about their situation, Enver Pasha and the Committee of Union and Progress, which was effectively in control of the Ottoman government, chose a friendship of necessity and signed a secret anti-Russian alliance with the Germans on August 2nd, 1914. The previous month, fearing the Ottomans were already leaning towards the German cause, Winston Churchill, as First Lord of the Admiralty, had refused to deliver the promised dreadnought battleships, which was a significant turning point in Ottoman public opinion as they had essentially been crowdfunded by the Ottoman people. In August 1914, after being chased across half the Mediterranean by the British and French fleets, the German battlecruiser Goeben and its light cruiser Breslau under Admiral Souchon, who would later get the Eisenhower, sailed into Constantinople, then still neutral, gambling on Ottoman support. And it worked. And I think that's my favorite little vignette of the war. The crews of the Goeben and the Breslau, pursued by superior ships of the Royal Navy, steamed into the Dardanelles, removed their caps, hauled down the Imperial German flag, raised the Ottoman crescent, and put on their fezzes. A sale was arranged, and through a legal fiction, these German ships were now Ottoman ships, protected for the present by Ottoman neutrality. This was a great PR win for the Ottomans, given the loss of the dreadnoughts, even though these ships were not comparable. The Entente powers would eventually declare war in October 1914, after Enver Pasha directed Souchon to take his now Ottoman fleet into the Black Sea, raiding Sebastopol and attacking the Russian Black Sea fleet, officially bringing the Ottoman Empire into the First World War after they refused the Russian and British ultimatums. And that's how Germans, Austrians, Hungarians, Bulgarians, and Ottomans ended up fighting together on the same side. This time was devastating for the Ottomans, and it affected people of every class, ethnic group, and distinction. And it's important to recognize that between the Italo-Turkish War starting in 1911 and the Balkan Wars starting in 1912, the Ottomans had already been at war for 3 years before the war began, and then the Great War raged for 4 more years. Needless to say, there were a lot of people, both military and civilian, from many different countries, whose contributions were wont to be recognized. Thus, in 1915, the Harp Madalyası, the War Medal, was created to recognize good service to the empire in war. It was presented to both allies of the Ottoman Empire and to its own soldiers, as well as civilians. It's shaped as a 5-pointed red star with the Ottoman crescent in the center, distinctly Ottoman symbolism. In the center is the Tura, or cipher, the name of the Ottoman Sultan written in calligraphy. There's a small circle over here, that's the Mahla, or the nickname of the Sultan. This is Mehmet V. Below that is the Hijri year 1333, or 1915. According to the Ottoman regulations, it came with this ribbon, and there were also campaign bars for the ribbon from everything from Çanak, Gallipoli, to Gaza, to the Canal Raid, to Kut. And most recipients received their medal in a box with the certificate.
1332 savaş yıllarında gösterdiği mükemmel özen, gayret ve iyi başarılar için majesteleri sultan tarafından Türk Savaş Madalyası ile ödüllendirileceksiniz. Daha önce olduğu gibi görevlerinizi yerine getirme ve beklenen başarıları için öngörülen yasaların aynı yörüngelerinde yürümeye devam edin. Böylece nimet ve ödül kazanabilirsiniz. Savaş Bakanı Enver, 1332.
The recipients show the breadth of the impact of the war on the Ottomans, with enlisted and officer recipients, pilots, doctors, nurses, civilian officials, and of course, Allied soldiers. Like the Iron Cross in Germany, it was fairly commonly awarded as a service medal. It was on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of military decorations, actually. Above it were also silver and gold versions each of the liyakat, or merit, and the highest military decoration, the imtiyaz, for gallantry, all of which were also presented to Allied German, Austrian, and Bulgarian officers. And that's not even getting into the orders like the Mejidi, but that's a story for a different day. The list of recipients is extensive, from Kaiser Wilhelm and the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen, to Ottoman notables like Mustafa Kemal and Kazim Karabekir. By the way, Karabekir was one of the most notable commanders in the Mesopotamian campaign, where Ottoman and German troops fought British, Indian, Anzac, and Kuwaiti troops in modern-day Iraq. And Rifleman Moore is covering the Mesopotamian campaign as part of the Great Collab, so check that out after this. Now, the Germans always referred to it as the Eiserne Halbmond, or the Iron Half Moon, and of course we know the name the Gallipoli Star, but if there's one takeaway from this video, it's that it's the war medal, the Harp Madalyası, and not the Gallipoli Star. The Gallipoli Star name seems to have been either an honest mistake or a bit of propaganda made during the war. They were highly sought after as souvenirs, and the story goes that after encountering dead and captured Ottoman soldiers wearing them only after the Gallipoli campaign, in the later campaigns in the Middle East, Sinai, and Palestine, and seeing 1915 on the badge, British and Anzac troops came to the conclusion that it was for turning away the Entente at Gallipoli. So as a war trophy, it was the Gallipoli Star, but in the Ottoman Empire, it was the Harp Madalyası, the war medal. Many of the German recipients served in the Asian Corps, serving in the Middle East, or they were sailors and were important to naval operations like with Souchon. In fact, Grand Admiral Dönitz, who would eventually become the temporary Führer in 1945, would start his career as a lieutenant aboard Breslau. You can often see it peeking out in photos even many years after the war. Turkish ones were mostly painted metal, with many higher quality versions being produced in Germany and Austria, with the characteristic red enameling and more precious metals being used. Just like earlier recipients of the crescents and the Majidis, people often had custom replicas made of higher quality in their own country. One of my favorite unexpected connections with this is that one of the most prolific makers of the star was Bailey, Banks and Biddle out of Philadelphia, and you can see BB & Co. on the back of quite a few of these. They made high-quality replicas of many different orders and medals for people all over the world. And I didn't think an Ottoman medal would have an American connection of all things. Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Over the years, there have been many arguments and misunderstandings about the star. People mistake it as German or come up with all sorts of theories about it. There's always someone in the comments saying that it was sacrilegious to give something with the Tura on it to non-believers, and even more people asserting that no true Muslim would have worn the Iron Cross, a Christian symbol, and that it just shouldn't have been worn. But the truth is that it was worn, and they were presented to both armies, and it's common for soldiers and officials to get awards from allied nations, whether it's the Crimean War, World War I, or the present day. There's so much history in individual uniforms and medals. Each soldier's uniform tells a story. There's stories of alliances and friendships, adventures and valor. There's something deeply poetic about a row of campaign ribbons, all the history that it tells at its face, and all of those stories behind them that might not be told. So next time you see an old war photo, read the uniform. Check for those outlying details and see what stories, however fanciful, come to life. Now, to continue your journey supporting the Grand Alliance of the Great Collab, be sure to watch Ottoman Reenactor's episode on Ottoman uniforms of the Great War. And thank you to Jim for his voiceover work and research support. Thank you again to all the supporters on Patreon. I am Daryl, known in genteel circles as the Lord Rivers, and this is the Ministry for History.